And we are alive. Once again, my good friend Larry Johnson, how are you doing?
I'm alive. I'm here.
Kicking. That's good. I love this song. Alive and kicking.
Yeah.
Who was that? I forgot the name of the band. Larry, although not too much action going on this week, a lot of interesting things happening. I would like to start with Syria, since last week, when we were about to start the show, there was the news that again Syria hostilities were going on inside Syria, and during this time, Israel bombed Damascus, and then Al Jalani kind of pooped his pants and delivered to Israel some pieces of Syria. What is going on there, Larry? You wrote a fantastic piece, and I would like to mention this about especially the types what's it called, the different types of Muslims.
Well, dealing with the terminology, we hear the terms Wahhabi, Salafist, Takfiri are tossed about, and I don't think the average person in the West, particularly Christians and Jews, even understand, or atheists for that matter, too, even understand the meaning of those terms. So let me get the official version of what's going on in Syria, or sort of the narrative, is that these former terrorists, now reformed, Jalani, are now trying to bring the country together, except the group that Jalani headed was called Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. It comprised largely of members that are not even Syrian. And they use religion I'll call it as a facade. They claim to be Muslim warriors, but they espouse, let's call it a perverted version of Islam. Something that is if you took it to the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran, or any other respected Sunni cleric, imam, they would roundly criticize these crazies because they're killing and murdering. The sort of the Christian view of Islam is you view it as a monolith, and that they don't make any distinctions, and they say that they're all crazed fanatics who want to kill Christians. And the Muslims, I guess you'll find Muslims that look at Christianity the same way. A bunch of crazed fanatics that want to kill Muslims. So this group, they are Salafists. The Wahhabis are they're a very fundamentalist. They believe, and so they get to the truth of Islam. They're the true believers, the true practitioners. So then to go from a Wahhabi, which is primarily Saudi Arabia, that was founded in the 18th century, this movement, to the Salafist, which emerged about 100 years ago, a little more than 100 years ago. But then you get these people who feel that they're invested with the truth. They are the true believers. God has given us the light. They therefore can go out and declare you as a takfir, an unbeliever. So takfiris are people who can go around and label others as not being worthy of being a Muslim. You see the same thing in Christian. You're not a real Christian or Jew. You're not a real Jew. That kind of thing. But what is taking place is you had this evolution from ISIS to al-Nusra to Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. And there were some differences splitting off, but they really, the ISIS was sort of, I believe, a creature of the CIA, of Western intelligence. I mean, it was organic and growing, but it became co-opted at some point by the West. It's different from Al-Qaeda. It is wrong to lump Al-Qaeda in with the ISIS, these radical, the ones who claim to be devout Muslims and are killing other people because they aren't Muslim. When in fact, a lot of those who are in ISIS, they're not deeply religious at all. Like I said, it's more of a facade. Bin Laden and Ayman Zawahiri, his deputy, had actually criticized the founder of ISIS for his brutality and for attacking other Muslims. That's why I say Al-Qaeda was more of an, if you will, an anti-imperialist, anti-US imperialist organization. But we've still seen over the years that the CIA has found a way to use and co-opt some of those organizations, and particularly has worked with the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. We got Ambassador Jim Jeffrey, who has admitted that during a broadcast on PBS Frontline. So what's going on in Syria right now is it's an ethnic, tribal mess. You've got the Sunni-backed HTS killing Alawites and Christians. Alawites are a variation of Shia Islam. You've got a Shia population as well. You have Sunni Bedouin tribes. You've got Kurds. You've got Druze. And they all are, they don't tend to intermarry or interact. And even within the Druze community, it lives on both the Israeli side of the border and in Syria, and stretches over into Lebanon, I believe. They've even got differences within amongst themselves. So it's organized chaos right now, and there's no solution in sight.
Yeah, well, you mentioned this thing on your article. You can find all the fantastic Larry articles on sonar21.com. What I find very interesting is because we always tend to describe, as you mentioned, the ISIS and al-Nusra and HTS, whatever, as descending from Al-Qaeda, and it's probably some descent, not the descending from Al-Qaeda. And I remember watching, Bin Laden's speeches, and it was very, very directed to the United States and imperialism.
Yeah,
it used to be very directed to that. There was no, head chopping of other Muslims. We have an enemy, and we have to find the enemy. That was it. And at some point, we just put everything at the same box.
Yeah, and that's the danger. Of course, Scott Horton's book, Enough Already, really traces out the origins of this, going back to 1979, 1980, where once we provoked the Soviet Union into invading Afghanistan, and I say provoked because Zbigniew Brzezinski, who had been the national security advisor for Jimmy Carter, had talked about that he wanted to embroil the Soviets in a Vietnam-style war, and saw Afghanistan as the best place for that. And so once the Soviets had come into Afghanistan, initially it was at the invitation of the government. We began funding a whole variety of Islamic groups, extremist groups. And Dostam, Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, red-bearded guy. And that's actually where we first got contact with some of these, people later affiliated with ISIS. Bin Laden was there, but it's not clear that we ever actually ended up working with or having contacts with Bin Laden. I knew two of the principals that were involved with that whole, Milt Bearden was one. and he was on the ground. He was like the chief of station running the operation, and then did so also back in Washington. But out of that, developing these relationships with some of these terrorist organizations, CIA used it again and to launch a war, second Chechen war in Russia in 1999. I believe August 7th, 1999 to be precise. So, the sort of the cartoon version that were presented on the news, that Muslim bad, Christian good, and it's really a lot of lies wrapped in there, and it's all designed to manipulate emotion, manipulate opinion.
And all about soft power. Now, how do you see the future developments for Syria? I know we don't have a crystal ball. I'm not asking for that, but how do you imagine? Because I do see this chaos, terrible thing, but perhaps a necessary thing for what's coming, whatever is coming next. How do you see this, Larry?
Well, I've made this point repeatedly over the last day or two, that al-Shara or al-Jalani, the leader, quote, the installed leader, he is not organic. What I mean by organic is somebody who is popular, who's respected, who has widespread support. To go back to like George Washington, he was widely respected, and it was in the American colonies, and therefore became a natural choice to become the first president. Al-Shara doesn't have any, he's not known among the Druze, he's not known among the Kurds, he's not known among the Alawites, he's not known among the Christians, and it's even questionable how much he's known among some of the Bedouin tribes. But he's been put in place by us, by the West, and then shaved his beard and cut his hair and put a Western style suit on him. He's our. Then becomes the monkey bitch boy. He has to dance to our tune. And so without a genuine leader, what we knew as Syria will fracture and return to these ethnic areas. The Kurds will control the Kurdish area. They've got oil, and so it'll just be a matter of finding someone to work with them and get that oil out there and distribute it, which is naturally probably would be Turkey, except for the Turks and the Kurds have quite a violent history. Although recently the PKK, the Kurdish terrorist organization, or was labeled terrorist organization, disarmed. But the Bedouins, they're not known for staying and just having one specific place, large cities. They're not big city dwellers. The Druze have their communities. So, as I said, it's going to split up into, there's nobody yet in place in Damascus capable of restoring unity to their country.
Divide and conquer. Rule number 1.
Yep.
Even Al-Jalani shaved, and I'm shamefully unshaved.
Yeah, week. Man. Look at you as a jihadist.
I already told you I can be easily taken by a Mexican, cartel chief or something like that.
You get the Pablo Escobar look.
Something like that. It was played in the Netflix show. Pablo Escobar was played by a Brazilian dude.
Was he?
Yeah, it was good because he's a great actor, but it was very interesting to watch Pablo Escobar talking Brazilian Portuñol.
So he was, that was the show Narcos, right?
Exactly, Narcos. First the Pablo Escobar one, the 2 series. Larry, moving a little bit from Syria. The hell's going on with Russia, the United States and Russia? More precisely, the dude with the chick's name, the what's it? Lindsey
Graham. Lindsey Graham. Yeah, they call my old friend Pat Lang called him the little old lady from South Carolina. There's always been some questions surrounding whether or not Lindsey Graham is homosexual. It's always weird when you get these conservatives that are the pro-family value types, but then they're closeted homosexuals. It is sort of it's weird. But what's worse than that is his advocacy for war at any price. Well, without regard to the price, he doesn't pay any cost. He doesn't have any skin in the game. And so he's been, a very strong advocate for attacking Russia. And he's been doing a lot of trash talking. But, the reality is the United States, short of declaring war and going to war with Russia, which would mean the end of the United States. Short of that, the United States has no leverage over Russia. Russia is in a position, has effectively won the war in Ukraine. It's just a matter of finishing it up. And there's nothing the United States can do to alter that course of events. So Trump's frustrated, but he's the one that shot his mouth off saying he could end it in 24 hours. Now he wants to pretend that he never said that and never meant that. Well, we all knew he meant it when he said it. He was delusional then, and he's delusional now. They refused to come to grips with the reality on the ground is that Russia is, its armed forces, the number of men under arm now is 1.5 million. The United States only has 452,000.
Arguably men.
Huh?
Arguably men.
Yeah, arguably. So, there's just no comparison. And yet the United States continues to insist, like Trump, we got the best. I was just listening earlier today. He was bragging of, we got more missiles than anybody. We're going to build more ammunition than anybody. No, you don't. Even if you signed an executive order today, it wouldn't happen. Excuse me. It wouldn't make a change of any significance for 2 to 3 years, maybe, if that. Because the materials needed, for example, to make artillery shells, we don't have it all here. We have to import it from, China. Oh, but we're going to level 500% tariffs on China, according to crazy Lindsey Graham. Gee, do you think China will do anything to push back or retaliate? I suspect they might. Yeah, so it's just like these people aren't thinking this through. They're just they're reacting emotionally like a guy in a bar fight, as opposed to somebody who's playing a chess match and thinking 3 to 4 moves ahead.
Yeah, the other day I was watching some reporter asking things to Trump on the airport while he was about to enter Air Force One or just left Air Force One, and asking about Russia and the situation in Ukraine. And the guy, Trump freaked out. I don't know if you see this scene. That this is Biden's war. Why are you not asking Biden? He completely lost his mind.
Yeah.
This is
your president. Your president, Don. Man up. And it's his war. It's his war now. He could have cut off the aid, could have pulled the intelligence support, but he didn't. He kept it in place. So he's now an accessory to murder. That's simple.
Yeah, that's simple. And going to kind of continue the subject, but now looking more at Brazil, which is now the ball of the time. That's what we call in Brazil, the ball of the time. We have this situation with President Bolsonaro, former President Jair Bolsonaro, that is being, arrested and put, the GPS on his leg, the bracelet, and we have Trump mailing up over Brazil. Brazil responding at height, not exactly what many people would expect, but at least responding at height. And now we have again the dude with the chick's name talking about putting tariffs to all countries that supply that make business with Russia.
Right.
Brazil, India, China. He forgot about South Africa, but it's all right. Brazil. He named these three countries,
Right.
especially. Are we at war? United States against BRICS or United States against Brazil? Economic war.
Yeah, it is. I think this was sort of a wake-up call for Lula. I thought he was had been a little squishy before that. I mean, I view Lula as an Erdogan type character, very self-serving, not while he's positioned as being on the left side of the political spectrum. He's very much a opportunist, but in this going after Bolsonaro, he just he's doing to Bolsonaro what is perceived as Bolsonaro did to him. This kind of politicization or the turning politics into war and punishment is a very dangerous road to go down. But the United States has decided that it must destroy BRICS. I think they haven't announced it as such, but that's the plan. So we'll see what transpires.
Yeah, that would bring me to the question, Larry. Do you think that the United States have any possibility or many possibilities to deal with an economic war against BRICS? Because it really looks to me that the United States is focusing in the weaker link, and I would say that's Brazil. And I have some thoughts to describe Brazil as the weak link in BRICS, starting by as you just mentioned, this double, which is not terrible, but this double deal with Lula. Here, there, sometimes you have to pick a side. at some moments, sometimes you have to pick a side. Do you think that? What do you think is the plan of the United States, Larry? And I know you're not going to tell me, but I'm going to ask anyway.
United States, you're implying that there's actually plans. Thought this through. I don't think they have. We've seen a decisive shift in trade patterns over the last 3 years. Where now Brazil, at one point 3 years ago, United States was a bigger supplier of agricultural products, including meat, grains, soybeans, to China, and now that's shifted, where Brazil is now one of the biggest suppliers, and the United States no longer is. And I think you're going to see that pattern repeat itself. I know that Russia is now moving to open up its own gold market. So right now, the gold market, the London bullion market, it controls the price, really the price of gold. It sets the price of gold in the world, and is the source for like the hub for the transactions. Well, guess what? Russia now is moving out to create its own gold market and operate out of Moscow, turning Moscow more into a financial center. And if they succeed in doing that, that's going to be a real threat to the U.S. petrodollar as the world reserve currency. So there's a lot at stake here, and I think the economic authorities in the United States are trying to do what they can, and will work with the intelligence community to attack and derail BRICS. But the U.S. actions, which are so antagonistic, are having the opposite effect. They're inspiring more progress on the part of the BRICS countries. In particular, I think, 6 months before the summit in Rio that took place 2 weeks ago, I was most thought nothing much is going to happen. This is going to be a meaningless event because Brazil is so squishy. But it actually turned out to be a very important and effective event, sort of re-energized the group to realize, hey, the United States is keen on killing us, and so we got to defend ourselves. And they came out, I think, headed into the next summit in a much stronger position.
I have a theory about this last BRICS summit, and I'm going to ask, what do you think? Because it was very much portrayed in the media as, a weak summit. Nobody went. It was BRICS. Nobody cares about BRICS anymore.
That's what Trump said, and it was ridiculous.
And just 2 minutes after that, Trump puts this tariff, this 50% tariffs on Brazil, attacking Brazil. That was a direct attack on Brazil. And what happens is that, as you mentioned, Trump started talking about that. All the right wings in Brazil start talking about that as a major victory. Brazil is done. Brazil is going to leave BRICS, and it does look to me that it was kind of done on purpose, and
Mm-hmm.
Trump got the bait.
Well, I mean, again, you tell, I haven't been monitoring public opinion in Brazil, but I suspect that in the aftermath of Trump's attacks and hitting Brazil with tariffs, that let's call it the anti-American feeling has gone up, not down.
Exactly. Is the uniting against the common enemy. That's page 2 of By the Book. Come on. Really? Doesn't anyone study anything at Washington? No, it doesn't look like.
Yeah,
I know that.
That's the problem.
Yeah. So, Larry, just moving to last question I would have. It's about Epstein's story.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't even know if I should ask that, because there is no Epstein story, right?
Yeah. The way it's framed, it's almost like it's deliberately framed as, the Epstein list. That's what people keep talking about. And there is a list that's been compiled by people like Ryan Dawson as a result of going through court transcripts and pulling names out. What really needs to happen is there are credible allegations from, I believe, more than 100 now women who, when they were young girls in their teens, were sex trafficked by Epstein. And then this took place with a number of very powerful, wealthy men. Now, the question was Epstein doing this to blackmail, extort? We don't know the answer to that question. The issue is that you've got all of this information in the U.S. government possession, and they have not gone out to develop prosecutions against the people who are named. And, it's one thing to be named by the girls that claim that they were raped. Then you got to do the investigation. Are those allegations credible or not? Is there corroborating evidence? And that's what Bondi and all these cats are, Kash Patel and now Dan Bongino. They made a big issue of this when they weren't in government. Now that they're in government, they realize going after this list, going after the people who've been implicated by all these different women, as well as employees of Jeffrey Epstein, they're going to compromise a variety of very wealthy, powerful people. And Trump's trying to protect them, number one. But number two, Epstein was involved as let's call him an intelligence asset of Mossad and the CIA. with the CIA as early as the Iran-Contra affair, getting weapons to the Contras. He was tied into Saudi that was involved back then. So, they want this to go away. Now, did Epstein actually kill himself? They want you to believe he committed suicide, except he had a broken neck, which, according to the Dr. Bodden, an acclaimed forensic pathologist, that there's no way that this had all the hallmarks of a strangulation. But was it even Epstein's body? Because the body that's being a side photograph of the body being wheeled into the hospital in New York City after being taken from Rikers Island or the Manhattan Correctional Center, the nose and the ear did not match the real Jeffrey Epstein nose and ear. So was this entire thing staged to make it look like he died? And then he was spirited off to Israel or some other place, has had additional plastic surgery to hide his identity, because he'd be a 72-year-old guy now if he was out. We don't know, but everything that what's interesting is Bondi at the DOJ, as Attorney General, released videotape. Turns out the videotape of the jail facility, one window perspective, was edited. They claimed it was unedited. No, it had been edited multiple times, but it only covers a time period before Epstein actually dies. It doesn't go through the whole time when he was found in his cell dead. You don't see people rushing in and out. So this is, I don't think this is going to go away, but some of the heat that had built up around it was taken off by Trump. The revelations coming out of the Director of National Intelligence regarding how Russiagate was a creation of Hillary Clinton and with the help of Barack Obama, and that the intelligence community willingly and knowingly lied about Russia's involvement in the 2016 election.
Yeah, that's very. I was thinking about this today. How can we trust the reports that Russiagate was a hoax? At the same time, trust the reports that Epstein killed, self-exit by himself. It's kind of hard.
Well, no. I mean, they've got it's very easy to believe what Tulsi Gabbard released, because she released original documents. These were not fabrications. These were communications between the principals. So there's no doubt about that. I mean, this has now been settled without any doubt. With respect to Epstein, they've tried to pretend that there's nothing there, nothing to see here, move along. And there's plenty to see there. If nothing else, I put a piece up last week to almost $1 billion. Why do these major financial institutions pay out these massive settlements to victims of Jeffrey Epstein? And one of the largest settlements was done by J.P. Morgan Chase, and Jamie Dimon, according to some of the girls, was implicated in sexual activities on the island. So, and you've got even Alan Dershowitz, who claims, "Oh no, I had no he had a relationship with him, and it actually flew to the island." Had been on Jeffrey Epstein's plane. There are flight logs that show that. But you get Dershowitz himself, and people go look it up on YouTube, where he's sitting there and said, "Well, yeah, I went to his mansion in Manhattan, and I got a massage, but I kept my underwear on." I mean, really, dude?
At this time,
yeah, please. So, there's a massive cover up, and hell, Trump's got a 15-year relationship with Epstein. He's trying to pretend that I hardly know the guy. He's a creep. They were best buddies for 15 years. And Trump was hanging out with him. There is one author who's been writing frequently about Trump, said that he personally saw photographs at Jeffrey because he was interviewing, this author was Michael Wolff, was interviewing Jeffrey Epstein, possibly about doing a book, and Epstein was showing him photos of Trump with topless women or girls sitting on his lap, and Trump may be trying to hide that part of his relationship too. But if that was the case, they should have made an issue of it in the campaign, which they did.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which I find very interesting is always the Bill Gates case, because just after Epstein's scandal was started to pump up, by some chance Melinda walked away with half of his money.
Yeah.
How many wives of very, very powerful men, very rich, extremely rich men, actually gets half of it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's pretend. Larry, can I ask you a 5-minute question? Well, it can be more or less, depending on your answer. I don't know about your time. I've been watching, monitoring a little bit Twitter, Shitter, YouTube, the comments on the live streams, and other people as well. And we have been noticing a massive psyops operation going on in Brazil. How can I ask you this question? Can you explain a little bit to us, how does a psyops operation happen? With what kind of agents? Silent whispers, people pushing narratives. Just scratch the surface of that, so we can have a better idea of how to deal with it.
It's very, very easy now with social media and the internet. When I was working on the psychological operations or the covert action to use information to generate a change in public opinion, and in the case of the Afghan task force, it was to build support for the Mujahideen and build opposition towards the Soviets. Well, then what you had to do was you'd get newspaper articles written for magazines, maybe even some books, be funded indirectly, funded from a source that wasn't apparent. I mean, there were articles, there's this one French magazine that the owner of it was Adam. He hated the CIA, and he was convinced the CIA was a very nefarious outfit. And we even planted stories in his magazine that he didn't realize came from the CIA. So, now today it's just a matter of you get a blog, get some influencers, you use bots, pepper the internet with a message. One example has been, Russia suffered all these horrendous casualties. Not true, but that has become firmly embedded in a lot of people's minds. So, that's how it's done.
Yeah, we've been monitoring this, and it's very visible for us that understand minimally.
It's easy to produce video. You can do verbal audio podcasts. You can create cartoons, and you can you can even gin up a fake incident to get people outraged about something, and then they're all commenting on it and go to make it go viral. Yeah, so it is we live in an era where information warfare is much more powerful than at any time in history.
Yeah, we have to keep our eyes open. Larry Johnson, my good friend, thank you very much for adapting for my time today. My schedule was rough.
I understand.
I will remember everybody that all the links are on the description. Follow Larry's Larry's work on his sonar21.com. Don't miss it. Most amazing articles there. And hopefully see you next week, my friend.
Okay, will do. Take care, Marcel.
Take care. Bye-bye.